Welcome to another episode of Pod for Good, a podcast where we learn from those doing good in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the world, why they care, what we can do, and most importantly, what you, the listeners, can do. Pod for Good is produced and edited by Random Productions, which is me. So if you like how we sound and are thinking about starting a podcast, reach out to me. I am very easy to find. Pod for Good can be found anywhere you get your podcasts. And if you enjoy what we do here, please make sure to subscribe and share this episode on social media and, maybe leave us a review if you'd like. I am, as always, your chief philanthropod and class clown for advocating for unicorns, Jesse Ulrich.
And I am your vice admiral philanthropod and class clown for permanency, Chris Miller.
In this episode, we are talking with two members of the Tulsa CASA team, Elizabeth Fisher, their executive director, and Comfort Keidel, the development and community relations manager.
We talked to Liz and Comfort about why being a court-appointed special advocate is so important, why they should do a taco fundraiser, and Kentucky bluegrass.
So much grass talk. Ooh, pod for grass. I hope you all enjoy this. I hope you enjoy this episode. To the interview. We are very excited to have Liz and Comfort on the podcast today. Liz, Comfort, how are you guys doing?
Wonderful.
Great.
How are you?
I'm good. Summer has arrived in Tulsa, as it does every year after it rains for 3 weeks. And now
miserable.
It's hot and humid. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I live in a 2-story house now, and I don't like it. The second story gets hot.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But this is not the Tulsa HVAC podcast. This is Pod for Good. So we'll move past that. So you both work for Tulsa CASA.
Mm-hmm.
Not Casa Tulsa, the restaurant, which we're starting after the podcast. But for either one of you, why don't you tell our listeners what that organization is?
So CASA stands for Court-Appointed Special Advocates, and we train and support volunteers in the community to advocate for children who are abused and neglected and in the court system.
So, okay, let's take a step back because that was a lot. So, so kids who are picked up by social services, the police, or whatever, who are in bad relationships, are in the system, and then they need someone
children in foster care.
So these kids are already in foster care.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then these advocates do what? They like to get them to stay in foster care, or walk me through the process, I guess.
So when a child comes into foster care, they start at the court process. And at that point, we can be appointed and they'll get an advocate to advocate for their best interest. In court, there are a lot of different players there. There's a child's attorney that advocates for whatever the child wants. There's a parent's attorney that advocates for the parents' wants. There's an assistant district attorney that is on the state. And then there is CASA.
A DHS worker.
Oh, a DHS worker.
And a judge.
And then there's CASA. And CASA is there just to advocate for the child's best interest, no matter what it, what am I trying to say?
I don't know.
Well, I guess what does CASA do that the attorney for the child isn't doing?
So the child's attorney has to advocate for whatever the child expresses that they want. So whatever they want, if they want to go live on Mars and eat chocolate ice cream every single day, they have to stand up in court and say, this is what I want this child to do. We advocate for their best interest. So we are the best interest piece. So we're there. We talk to parents, foster parents, teachers, doctors, nurses, therapists, and we get a good understanding of what the child is going through and what is in the best interest, whether it's, to go home to their parents. And that's usually what it is. If the conditions that brought them into custody are corrected. And if not, find them something very permanent. And that's what a CASA is there to do, is to get them to permanency as quickly as possible so they're not languishing in the foster care system.
Mm-hmm.
So what would typically happen if there wasn't a CASA advocate there?
So right now, we have approximately 1,500 children in foster care in Tulsa County alone. And there are 4 judges that hear those cases. There are 4 children's attorneys, unless there's a conflict. there are 4 assistant district attorneys. So that's a lot of cases, and those kids have to be seen twice by the court. They have to review the case twice a year, so every 6 months. That's a lot of information, and they just don't have enough time to really gather all that information. And that's actually how we started in the first place. A judge in Seattle was, making these hard decisions, and he didn't have enough information to make it. And so he started CASA.
I mean, there's so many different directions to go here, but I mean, we'll get into the personal part. Like, when did you get involved with this, and like, why does this mean so much to you?
So it started a long time ago. It was when I was in high school. My brother just finished law school, and he became a CASA. And I thought, oh, this is so cool. I want to do it. But I was too young. You have to be 21 at least to do it. And he ended up, serving as a CASA volunteer for a long time, and then ended up later on adopting a little boy from foster care that had a CASA. When, of course, that boy is now a man. And when he graduated from high school, my brother invited his CASA to graduation. So yes, and I wanted to do CASA, so I started off volunteering years and years ago. And then when an opening came open at the agency, I took it. And then, so I supervised volunteers and then became the program director and then the executive director about 4 years ago. So I really believe in the program.
Mm-hmm. She does.
I mean, because, there are nonprofit professionals who like sort of bounce around either because of interest or because of work environment or because of, sometimes it's the only way you can get a raise is to go to another organization. So it's actually nice to hear from someone who like literally worked their way up to where they are.
Definitely.
Because they cared specifically about that issue.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Comfort?
That means a lot to me. Liz's servant leadership and all of this. I think it's so important for people to have a whole view of whatever entity they're working in. And so that was actually really appealing to me when I applied for the job and met Liz, that she did have a really solid why. Because so many people that get into this, they lose their why over time. And that's really important to me to keep it because I have a vested interest in all of this. I have 3 children that I have adopted from foster care. And I think every single one of my kids has had a CASA worker at one time or another. And I've had different experiences with CASA. And when I had the opportunity to come work for CASA in October, I was excited, but I was also skeptical because child welfare work is very difficult. And it has certainly taken a toll over me over the past decade of working at DHS and being a foster parent and all of those things. But when I think about from my very large perspective on all of this, because I've worn a lot of hats in the child welfare system now, and I always go back to how do we fix it? How do we fix the broken system? And I just, especially since I started working for CASA, I think CASA's it. And that's not because I've drank the Kool-Aid, but because when I think about the approach that has to be done to fix the broken system, no one's coming to save us. It's going to take a collective effort. And people like you and I can be volunteers and CASA workers, and they have a lot of power, surprisingly, as just a volunteer advocate. Judges really do consider what the CASA worker says. And it's interesting, one of the stats that I like to share with people, and probably Liz can articulate it better, about months in care and permanency.
So a child will gain permanency who has a CASA on average 7 months faster than a child that does not have a CASA volunteer.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And so you mentioned anyone can be a volunteer. As someone who hasn't done it, I mean, it sounds a little scary to start. So how do you get somebody with zero legal experience, zero experience with child welfare, ready to be in a position to be an effective advocate?
So one of the beauties about each CASA program is its own 501c3 in Oklahoma. However, we do have a national and a state organization that sets standards that gives us our training. So we have 30 hours of training curriculum that we have a volunteer go through before they're assigned to a case.
Which is actually longer than a foster parent training.
Yeah.
Huh.
By 3 hours, but still.
All right. You can learn a lot in 3 hours.
Yeah.
So.
And then they have 12 hours of continuous training after that every year. And then they're paired with an advocate supervisor that's going to help them, that has an understanding of the child welfare system. So if there's any, barriers that they run into, that advocate supervisor can help. If there's anything that they don't understand, then we'll get the training that they need. But our original pre-service 30 hours of training is, it really covers so many different subjects, from drug addiction to domestic violence to poverty, trauma.
Mm-hmm. Do you specifically try to target people with legal experience, either law students or practicing, or you really go after just whoever?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of it, I think, because it's a very organic opinion of someone. It's not someone that's been trained in this. It's someone that just cares about the community, cares about kids, and steps into this with hopefully an open mind and a desire to see some change. Some of these cases last literal years. And these kids are just in there forever. And if you can get a CASA assigned on a case, I can't remember the exact cost, maybe Liz knows, of every child welfare case, what it costs the community between the DHS worker, the judge, the child's attorney, the district attorney, and all of those people that interchange all the time. It's really advantageous for all of us to become CASA workers, because it would help everyone's bottom line.
Yeah, listen, we know Pod for Good listeners are all about saving money. So, how many, and if you don't know the exact number, that's fine. Like, how many CASA volunteers do you currently have?
So we have about 75.
And how many would you like?
I would like to provide a CASA volunteer to every child in the court system.
Mm-hmm. And we have 1,500 approximately. And we were able to serve 257. Was that the number, Liz, last year? So obviously there's a huge deficit. Mm-hmm. A lot of kids are in the court system, the foster care system, and can't get permanency, which is either adoption or reunification back with their parents, or in a kinship where you go with somebody that the kid goes with somebody that they know. So there's a lot of pros to incorporating CASA into just about everything.
Mm-hmm. About how many cases or kids can a CASA volunteer support?
So usually a CASA volunteer will just have one child or one sibling set.
Gotcha.
So they can focus on that. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I mean, there are a lot of people in there, and each player has a lot of different kids that they're trying to represent. But the CASA only has one. And our CASAs go out and visit the children more often. So our minimum is once a month, but a lot of times the CASA is visiting the child once a week. So in a year, where somebody who's visiting for DHS, Department of Human Services, they will go out and see the child 12 times in a year. A CASA will go out 52 times. And so they have a lot of information.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like, for people listening, this is not like you show up to a thing, volunteer for a couple hours, and then leave. This is like a multi-year commitment for really like one or two kids.
Mm-hmm. And we ask for a year commitment when somebody comes in. And obviously sometimes things change, but sometimes people stay way past the year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm just sort of like dumbstruck by that sort of like commitment to somebody you don't know yet.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just incredible. I mean, the fact that you have so many already is amazing. And hopefully you'll get the Pod for Good bump in volunteers. What would you tell somebody who's like, oh my God, this sounds like too much, or I wouldn't even know like what to do. Like if there's a sales pitch for getting someone to volunteer for CASA, what would it be?
I don't know. I do know that I go into every single training class, because there's a moment that when I was going through the training class, I was like, oof. Oh, I don't know about this. This is really heavy stuff. I don't know if I can do it. This is scary. What if I make a bad recommendation? Mm-hmm. I would just say, just just do it, because it is the most fulfilling thing that I've ever done. And it is, well, it's part of who I am at this point.
Mhm.
So
Truly.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'll piggyback off that. As somebody that was a DHS permanency worker and investigator, seeing the stuff that you see is really important for perspective and understanding on what's actually going on out there. And so I encourage people to do it because you kind of get to see what's actually happening underneath the curtain. And there's a lot. A lot of times we think that DHS and CASA are only dealing with like the most extreme cases that we hear on the news, but those cases are all day, every day across the state. And so we really need a collective approach like this if we're ever going to get anywhere on this hamster wheel.
Well, and this feels like one of those situations where people might go in feeling like, well, I'm not going to be perfect, so I can't do this. Where having somebody who is just willing to care is better than the alternative, which would be no one.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And so, that feeling that Jesse's talking about, going in feeling like this is a lot, this is overwhelming, I don't know if I'm good enough for this, just showing up is better than
Nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I used to recruit foster parents, and that's a really big ask of people to devote so much of their lives to a situation with the child welfare system. And this is much more tame, and it gives you a chance to like put your toe in without it swallowing you all the way up. And what's beautiful also is you have your supervisor that is your guide through the whole thing. And you only have one case. I can't imagine the work I would have been able to do at DHS if I would have only had one case.
Yeah.
So this is the way to go. And we've got signups in my purse after I leave.
Yeah, this would be very different from the fostering dogs that you have been doing. Even though those dogs are very sweet.
Yeah.
Except for that little one. Very yappy type dog. So the why I think is very clear here, which is like you care about these kids who are stuck in a system that we know is too crowded to really help them immediately. Like already, even with a CASA volunteer, they're still in the system for a long period of time. And I'm mostly just curious, maybe to line it up a bit. Like I'm just very curious about the lawyer for the child who just has to advocate for whatever the child wants. And in your experience, what is the funniest thing that lawyers had to advocate for?
He would ask that question.
We do send out surveys, and one of the children put in there that the 3 things that would make them happy is a unicorn, new shoes, and a snow cone.
Well, 2 of those things are possible. So, a unicorn, yeah. I would love to see a lawyer get up and be like, my client would like one unicorn, please.
Unicorn, yes.
Not being greedy, asking for multiple unicorns, just one.
Yes.
So, unicorn.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, where would the funding for that unicorn come from?
That's a tough one. That's a toughie. But first, we got to find the unicorns, wherever they are.
Uh-huh.
So, in the sort of the Tulsa nonprofit landscape, what makes it more difficult, I would say, to get the word out about this work? Because I feel like Tulsa is a very philanthropic city. They all like to say that. And Tulsa has lots of issues that any sort of major, like mid-major city would have. But like, this is an organization that I would hear about because I was talking to people who were in some way related to the issue, but not sort of like in the greater sort of Tulsa nonprofit sphere. Like, how can we help you with that? Like, what can we tell people? Be like, this is a problem. It is very, very solvable if we have more volunteers. Like, what is the, I guess from your point of view, like, what is stopping you from sort of breaking through the sort of Tulsa, the Tulsa sphere of wanting to do good?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a tough question because you might not know the answer
Well, it
to
might be 2-part. I don't know. My initial thought is just communicating who we are and the need. Just, social media, that's hit or miss. And we are also a nonprofit, so we don't want to spend everything that we have on advertising. So it's a delicate balance of trying to get the word out there without overspending, but still communicate the need. You want to say anything on that?
No, just, we have about 75 volunteers, but we only have 7 people that work at the agency. So we don't have a lot of manpower. We run very lean. We don't spend a lot of money. Most of the money is that we have goes to the support of the volunteers, so directly into the mission.
Mm-hmm.
Does most of your money just come from general donors?
We have an annual fundraiser, and then United Way, we're a United Way agency, and then we get grants.
But people should be looking forward to a taco fundraiser, I believe, as we were talking about off air.
Yes.
Listen, I feel like that should have happened already. I want this to happen.
Yes. We are perceived as a Mexican restaurant, or, as I recently heard, an apartment complex.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
I can see that.
I mean, so like, has there been, each CASA chapter is its own thing, but there's obviously a national organization. Like, has there been discussions on the fact that like nonprofits love abbreviations, but maybe this one like needs some work, just because it'd be easier to like. It's one of those times where you actually need to say what the abbreviation is to people.
Well, it's been CASA since 1978, so I don't know if they've had that discussion.
Yeah.
So
what's your concern with it, Jesse? Is it that it's also a Spanish word?
No.
Is that the confusion?
Yeah, I'm racist. That's the problem. No, it's normal. Like, this happens in like the federal government all the time. Like, they'll pass a bill and the name of it will be an acronym that sort of spells out the thing it's supposed to be doing. And like in this case, the 4 words that make up CASA are words that like you wouldn't necessarily know that's what those words are for, right? So like it's hard to, if you saw CASA on a thing, to know what it means.
Right.
There must be a name for the 2 different kinds of abbreviations.
You're trying to get the kids home.
Yeah.
So CASA's the name of it.
You know what? That's a fair point. I stand corrected there. We'll edit all that out. If you're like me, you might hear estate planning and go, "Ugh, gross." You might think to yourself, "I'm not sure why I'd bother with that. Estate planning is only for the uber rich."
Tallgrass begs to differ. Tallgrass founding attorneys Laurel and Riley think everyone should have an estate plan. They know estate planning seems untouchable to a lot of folks, like something you have to do inside a stuffy law firm of Stuffy McLawyer Pants Esquire.
But I promise you, Tallgrass is nothing like that. For one, they work out of their home so their clients can feel at home. They obsess, because they're nerds, over making clients feel like they belong and are supposed to be there. Also, their kids might make an appearance. They will take time to answer all of your questions, even the uncomfortable ones. They will work relentlessly to make sure your plan's exactly what you need to feel secure and at peace.
So if you've been putting off planning for what's going to happen after you've gone, it's time for you to give Tallgrass a call at 918-770-8940 and start your plan today. Or visit their website at tallgrassestatePlanning.com and schedule a free initial consultation. For free! It's right there on the website.
And of course, there's more, because this is a podcast ad. If you tell them you're a Pod for Good listener, they're going to take 25% off their service fees. Just tell them Pod for Good sent you. Stop thinking estate planning isn't for you and give Tallgrass a call today at 918-770-8940 or on their website, which I'm not going to read out to you again. It's in our show notes. Thank you, Tallgrass.
No, but you're right. People see our name on our building and they've always wondered, like, what actually is CASA?
Mm-hmm.
So we're actually volunteer guardian ad litem. So that's harder to say.
You know what? That is fair. The CASA is easier to say.
It's a nice change.
Yeah, it's a good change. It's a good change. So you've been a volunteer. You sort of worked your way up to executive director. In that time, what have you seen sort of? Has the system gone worse since then? Has it gotten better? Is it even just more? Is it just slower now because there's more people in the system?
There's definitely more people in the system right now, more children. It's good and it's bad. Some improvements happen and then some areas get slower. Definitely. Some of the shutdowns related to the pandemic really caused a bottleneck that we're still seeing, some of the issues. So we're still working through that. And I think that that's a frustrating thing for people coming in to really understand how long these cases take.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess kind of similar along those lines, since you have seen so many aspects from volunteer, from seeing somebody you love be a volunteer, from seeing kids go through it and then working your way up, what kind of perspectives have you gained that have helped you as an executive director?
I think just working collaboratively. One of the things that I was most surprised about when I first stepped into the courtroom, because I had an idea probably from Law and Order or, some other TV show, I'm sure, about what it would be like. And then I saw all these people working together, and they might not be working together to the same level of where the child goes, but they're all wanting the child to be safe and secure, no matter who it is in the courtroom. And so really meeting people where they are in the courtroom is probably the most impressive thing that I've seen, is just how people kind of work together and collaborate. And I think that that's something that I continue to try to do and have in the agency.
I'd also say people have evolved into being more trauma informed and understanding of issues in the child welfare system, maybe casting less judgment and more understanding, which is so necessary to get these kids home.
Yeah, what she said. That's a better answer, actually.
So in a situation where there is kind of that difference of opinion on what's best for the kid, especially if the CASA advocate disagrees, the parents are trying to get custody, but the CASA advocate feels like they haven't done what they needed to. What is the kind of the process for them to say, no, we don't think that they're ready to go back? And how is that sort of weighed?
So every 6 months, there's a court hearing, and the court has to make a determination on permanency. And at that point, the department writes a report and sends it into the court, and we write a report and send it into the court. And it basically, has everything is fact-based, observations, and then concerns and assessments. And then they make recommendations. The CASAs are able to make those recommendations. It's filed in the court hearing, and it goes into the file. So,
and Tulsa CASA actually has a very high acceptance rate, 99%,
99.3,
99%.
Wow. All right.
99.3% of all CASA recommendations are accepted by the court, which is actually higher than the national CASA average of
80%. And that was 2022. Yeah.
That's quite a bit higher. I mean, both of them are incredibly high, which just shows that having a little outside perspective seems to help a lot. And I get that. People's lives are intense, and it is hard to be objective about things that you are sometimes genetically tied to.
And not just that, but like you mentioned before, information, right? Every other person in that courtroom is dealing with so many cases. A DHS agent, even if they're trying to do their best with the resources and time they have to make a recommendation, they may not have the ability to see the situation as much as often as a CASA advocate who is only focused on one case. So I can certainly see the value of that. And as long as everyone in that room wants what's best for the child, I can see them respecting the person who has the most information in the room, which is likely going to be the CASA advocate.
Exactly. And we try to give them as much training as possible. So in those court reports, they're putting in just their observations. There's no opinions. They don't have a dog in the fight. They're just there to provide this information and make recommendations to the court.
I kind of want this in all parts of our legal system, right? There should be a CASA for divorce cases. There should be a CASA for I'm going to say murder cases. That seems weird. I don't know what the CASA person would be doing there. But I mean, the idea of we all need somebody who is objectively advocating for us in multiple different systems that we have to deal with, like medical advocates, right? We need somebody who is not our doctor, who is also doing research to be maybe your doctor isn't mentioning this to you, or maybe you should go check, you should go to this specialist or whatever, because you don't know, you're too busy living your life.
Right. And you're the 12th patient.
Yeah.
Your doctor has seen that day.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. One story that is our big success story right now. There's an advocate named Bill, and Bill had been on the case for several years. The child had already been in care for several years when he got the case. And Bill is a seasoned, great advocate. He's one of our few males. We absolutely need more males. Looking at you too.
Now for the listeners, we're being pointed to directly.
Yes. Mhm.
And Bill, maybe you should tell this story.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So
It's a great partnership you two have. I love it.
Great.
Bill was working with this kiddo. I think he was adolescent, teenager, and was really struggling in foster care, in and out of foster homes, group homes, which those are just the worst. As a child, I just cannot imagine being in a situation like that. And so he was having some behavior issues, as many children in those situations do. And he was really struggling to find a home, a permanent home that he could stay in. And since Bill had been on the case for a little bit of time and knew the case, he started digging into the case and revisited the mother whose rights had been terminated several years prior. And he reached out to her, and come to find out she had recovered. And even though she had lost her children or her child, she was able to be reintroduced into the case many years later due to Bill's work and advocacy. And that child is now back with his mom and not floundering in foster care. So sometimes it's just about giving people another chance and another look-see. That's what a CASA can do.
I guess part of me is just surprised that this is allowed to exist in our system because it's so logical and it's so helpful, right? Like, why? I mean,
why hasn't somebody stopped it? Is that
no? But I mean, I'm just like that. Everyone just sort of respects this person who is a volunteer in the system. And I guess because at the end of the day, the majority of the people in that courtroom are trying to find a good outcome for the people involved. But it just, I don't know. I'm amazed it exists.
Yeah.
Like, it is shockingly useful and helpful.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to express that because I was like, man, this is a great system.
It truly is.
Mhm.
It really is.
Well, and I think to your point, the fact that everyone in the room does respect it, I think that there's some stereotypes around lawyers and judges that they can be a bit arrogant or can respect their own opinion above other people's, which isn't always fair, but sometimes is. So it is appreciative to see a system where they do respect somebody coming in and trying to help.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's unbiased. The person is not paid. I mean, it truly is the best interest of the child.
Yeah. So is it common, because you've mentioned a couple instances of this, for people who are CASA volunteers to ultimately end up adopting or fostering? Because it does seem like there have been a few instances where you've mentioned that.
So we do not, if somebody is a CASA volunteer, they cannot be a foster parent at the same time. We just don't want any kind of conflict happening.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So if they do adopt, it would have to be separate completely from that. And
Right.
obviously you'd want to have them, it would be a conflict of interest for them to adopt somebody they're advocating for as well.
Right.
But I imagine that becomes a common thing somebody wants to do. You're seeing a child in pain and suffering. You're like, I can help this child. But that's not their role here. Their role is to help them work within the system. But that's got to be tough. I imagine there's many of the 30 hours of training is involved in trying to stay emotionally.
But you know, so much of it can't be done in training. Like it's real world experience, and you're dealing with those exact things, those emotions that come up, because you do get attached, I'm sure, to some degree. And of course you want to make sure that child is okay. And so that's just another thing of stepping into the system. There's so many emotions that come with it, and so much self-learning and realization and development as a person. I mean, hopefully someone gets into it to help a child, but at the same time, it is a great personal development thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. And just getting in there and seeing everything going on in the system, I could see it making somebody want to do more. Maybe after they're done being an advocate, becoming foster parent or adopting, because they do want to, find an additional way to help these kids.
Yeah, or stay a CASA for a decade or plus.
For instance.
Has a volunteer ever been like, I'm going to law school, I want to fix this from the inside sort of situation?
Yes. Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm amazed people can volunteer for that long in a system that is literally designed to just like suck all of the will to do anything. And I mean, our court system in general is just overloaded in every regard. And I mean, like, personally, I think I just get angry a lot at like how slow the process is going. I guess like, how do the volunteers and how do the people managing the volunteers handle the fact that like, this is going to be like a multi-year process sometimes with your one case that you have? Like, how do you keep them like, I guess, motivated? They're obviously going to be motivated because of the child, but
prevent
optimistic.
burnout.
Yeah.
So that is something that we would definitely focus on with our advocate supervisors, just to make sure that they are there for the support that they need. Because if they feel supported, it usually will stay for the length of the case. And that relationship between the volunteer and the advocate supervisor is super close. In fact, I still years later go to dinner with my advocate supervisor. She's long gone. She works at BOK now, but
yay. Well, Chris, you work at BOK. You know everybody there.
Of course, everyone there. Yeah. So what about for the actual staff? How do you help support their mental health? Because I've got to imagine it takes a toll. The whole system takes a toll on your staff as well.
It does. I think it's just a lot of open communication. We found that during the pandemic, we couldn't work from home because we needed to be together just to talk things through and to be each other's support. So we have really created a very support-laden environment.
Absolutely.
May I suggest Taco Tuesdays going forward? Anyway, yeah, I mean, the mental health aspect of this is really just where my mind keeps going, because you have to, as the like salaried employees of a nonprofit, interact with the volunteers who are doing this for free because they care. But you also have to protect their mental health and your own at the same time. And sometimes you can be in a relationship with a volunteer where like both of you are helping each other's mental health. And then sometimes there can be situations where you're both draining each other's mental health. And so we don't need to keep harping on this. I'm just fascinated by like what that relationship becomes like over time. You don't have to talk about like a volunteer that you hate, obviously. So, okay, for our listeners who are maybe like, maybe I'll volunteer, maybe I won't, but I'm thinking about it now. What else can they do to help?
Donate. We always need funding. With more volunteers comes more necessary employees. So that's when we always want to make sure that they also have the necessary training. So donations go to that, and just still helping spread the word and get our name out there.
So if you had like, so you have 75 volunteers now, right? So if you had 25 more volunteers, would you have to hire another like program manager to handle those 25 volunteers? Okay.
We definitely advocate supervisor.
And we'd be happy to do so.
I was just curious, do you guys have a number? Like for every certain amount of volunteers, you're going to need another advocate? Is it 5? Is it 10?
So each advocate supervisor, their max is 30. So that means they're at capacity at 30 volunteers. Yeah.
That's a lot. I mean, I was thinking, as you were talking about earlier, like, you know, having to deal with in the child welfare system and like how that can be draining on you. I was just thinking about back to my time as being doing Holocaust education and how draining that was, and like trying to find ways to maintain your mental health while doing something that in its own right is both very important but also very depressing. So what we're gonna pivot as we do. So what do you guys what do you both do when you're not doing this? Like, what do you do for fun?
To decompress.
Yeah, to decompress.
Yeah.
I know what Liz does.
What does Liz do? Tell us, Liz.
No, I'm just not there. What do? I hang out with my kids, which sometimes that's good and therapeutic, and sometimes it's not. I'm a painter, and I like to do yard work. So those are my areas of therapy.
I like to read. I'm a huge nerd, so I love, sci-fi, fantasy.
Oh,
books.
all right. We're getting into it now.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite author right now?
So right now I'm reading the Wheel of Time series.
Yeah. You should check out our Wheel of Time podcast that we have. Wheel of Pod? Is that what we call it? No.
I don't remember what it was.
Yeah. We did it when the TV show came out. If season 2 ever comes out, we'll do another season of it. But
You look at me. I was like a guest on
I know,
one.
it was me.
It was you
It was-
and
it was me and
Andy.
Andy from Inner Circle.
Yes.
Wheel of Time. I've read the books twice, the Wheel of Time series. Still not 100% sure whether I liked them or not, but I've read it twice.
I liked a lot of the books in the series.
Yeah.
Some of them were not my favorite, but
Yeah.
it's going to happen when you have a 14-book
Yeah.
series.
I can't remember which ones I liked and which ones I didn't like because they all sort of blend in together. But we all agree that we like the Brandon Sanderson written last couple.
Yeah,
the most.
They
So-
finish well.
Yes.
Mhm.
I've heard
Um,
that. I think I'm on 8. Like I said, they do all run together.
Yeah, they do. They do a little bit.
Yeah,
So
but
I hope
between-
you enjoy
Yeah.
finishing
Yeah.
that.
It's it honestly satisfying ending. So I mean, you kind of worry as you get closer. You're like, how are they going to end this? And I don't know. I was pretty happy with it.
And
so.
it ends.
It does.
So there you
It
go.
does end.
Which is better than Game of Thrones.
It's true.
That's right.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
Or my wife's favorite book series, The Name of the Wind,
Yeah.
which one of the most beautifully written fantasy novels ever, but there's only 2 of them, and the author seems to have no intention of finishing the series. Similar to Game of Thrones in that regard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think he wants to finish at this point. So why would he?
Yeah, he did too good of a job writing the first 2 books. It's one of those situations where you did such a good buildup, no ending is going to be good enough for it. So, sorry we didn't go off on that much on yard work. We're not as
Yeah, I'm
drawn to
lost
yard
over
work.
here.
Listen, I had to mow my backyard this morning actually. So I have Kentucky bluegrass, and I'm very excited about.
Okay, did you edge too?
No, my
Apparently we are going into the yard work now.
okay. So I was given a gas powered edger.
I was about to ask battery or gas.
Well, so I have both. I was given a gas one that I can't get started, and I have a battery powered one, but I had to replace the edging part, and now it just flies off, and I don't know what I did wrong, and I'm afraid.
Masking tape works. I just
you
ran
know
into
what?
this issue recently.
I should just duct tape it. All right, yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's terrifying because I'm like, if somehow in the 5 times it's flown off, it has never
Yes.
flown off in my direction. But yeah, so my lawn looks great until you get to the end of it, and then it looks like garbage because I'm afraid to edge it. I can't I can't get the gas one started. So I'm not going to do this for 20 minutes.
I wouldn't worry about it too much. I kind of feel bad that I do yard work, quite honestly, because it's just a cultural norm at this point, and it's not helping the bees.
No, I've been reading a lot
I
about how you
still
shouldn't
do
be
it.
mowing as much.
Yeah.
Luckily, I'm supposed to leave my grass tall so the bees can have at it. So
Your Kentucky bluegrass.
my Kentucky bluegrass, which is a fescue offshoot, as I've learned. I've learned a lot about my yard since I bought this house. It was just so
Sure.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Chris, you have less of grass. You have less of a grass issue at your house.
Well, it's because we have giant trees, and so grass doesn't survive in my backyard at all.
Mm-hmm.
and
yeah.
it certainly wouldn't survive the pool that you put up every summer. So.
Yeah. I don't know if that's going up this year. We'll see.
No pool.
I don't know. We'll see.
All right. I feel like
It's something. It's we've put it up and taken it down several times, so it gets a little worse every time you do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Oh man. I just this is such a tangent. It was so
More so than the
Yes.
Kentucky bluegrass.
It was so crowded downtown yesterday, and I had to come into the studio. I had to park in the vast parking garage. So I had to pay for parking, like the first time since I moved back here 5 years ago. But I noticed that the hotel over there has a pool, like an inside pool, and I was looking very closely. I did not see a hot tub, which made me sad. But I'm like, hey, an indoor pool, and I was just like, man, indoor pools are nice. Anyway, that's my tangent. So
I thought you were going somewhere with
nope,
this.
I had nowhere to go.
Yeah.
I just saw that pool. And I need to tell somebody about it. So,
Indoor pools are amazing. My dream is a hot tub. I just really want a hot tub.
yeah,
so
Yeah.
bad.
yeah, hot tubs are great.
Yeah.
That'll be the pinnacle for me.
Once you get the hot tub.
Mhm. It can even be inflatable. Maybe not. I take that back.
I keep
No.
thinking about
I
buying
know.
an inflatable hot tub.
I do
just to
too.
see.
And I'm like, but are they?
I feel like it's one of those things that will last that year, and then you have to
Yeah.
get another one, and that might be okay considering that installing a hot tub is like a $5,000 to $10,000 expense. So,
I know,
Easily.
but it's hard to spend whatever it is, $800 for something that's going to last 1 year.
see, I was thinking more the $300 versions. Of
Oh,
it.
they have
So,
$300 versions?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're like camping hot tubs. So,
Okay.
You and a buddy.
yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
Fit
Well,
2 people can
here's
stand
our
in them.
tangent. Here's our tangent. You look at the pictures. these people don't have legs. That's the only way they could fit inside this hot tub is that their legs are gone. Because I'm like, there's no way 4 grown adults are fitting in that hot tub.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was quite the journey we just went on.
Yeah.
We'll
CASA.
Yeah. So tacos in a hot tub to raise money for CASA. There we go.
Yeah. And how does Kentucky Bluegrass fit in? Oh, that's the music we'll be playing.
Yes.
Got
yeah.
Got it.
Some
We got it
banjo
all
music.
tied back
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Listen, we're professionals at this. We can pivot back in a multitude of different ways.
Yeah.
Um,
So if somebody is interested in becoming an advocate, how do they connect with you? How do they get more information?
So they can either call us at the office at 918-584-2272 or go to our website at www.tulsacasa.org.
Does your phone number spell out CASA?
Yes,
Okay,
it
good.
does.
Good. I was
Yes, it
going to ask.
That's great.
918 CASA.
Yeah, it took me
It really
probably
does?
2 years. Yeah, 2
5-8
years
is
to
it-
realize that.
918-584 CASA.
CASA? Is that nice?
I learned something new today. Will be beneficial to me later.
I know that's like not a big thing anymore. People
It's
don't
not,
think
'cause,
about phone numbers that spell stuff anymore. It used
but
to be a big thing.
918 CASA, also a great name for a Mexican restaurant. Or
Casa de 918.
Yeah, there we go. There you go.
We got there.
So actually, honestly, that is a great place to stop. But so like, we'll obviously put all that information in our show notes. But before we go, just like give us one more sales pitch about why people should volunteer to do this. And it can be heartfelt, it can be funny, it can be both, it can be neither. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at the extrovert here.
One last sales pitch of why
people should volunteer.
Why they should become a CASA.
Yeah.
I would just say we are really needing CASAs because we have a massive problem on our hands with the child welfare system. And we literally have across the country hundreds of thousands of children in foster care. And it's not only an emotional toll on them, but the drain that it's on all of our pocketbooks as taxpayers. Also, what we do at CASA, you're not going to see an immediate change or fix or anything like that. What you're doing as a CASA worker now is planting the seeds for harvest at a later time and date, and just knowing that you're not going to sit under the tree. I don't remember what I have on my tagline at the end of my email, but it's something about sitting under the tree and planting the seeds early. I don't know.
Refer to Comfort's email signature for the end of that quote.
For the end.
That might be one of my favorite endings for a podcast ever. I love it. Like, I don't know what's in my email signature because, again, you don't look at it once you've made it.
That's true. That's true.
Well, Liz, Comfort, thank you so much for joining us today.
You.
And, I'm looking forward to that taco fundraiser. So
Okay, well, you're invited.
All right. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to our episode with Elizabeth and Comfort. Please, if you are moved by what they said, volunteer. If you identify as a man, especially go volunteer. They need male volunteers. And it's an incredibly worthy cause, and I have no doubt you will all enjoy it immensely. But if you are too lazy to do that, like Chris and I probably are, you can donate on their website. They also need money, as all nonprofits do. So go, give your time, give your money, support them, and look forward to that taco fundraiser because I'm making it happen. It's too perfect. Anyway, Pod for Good can be found on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And if you're going to give us stars, please only give us 5 stars. But if you're going to give us less than 5 stars, please tell us why. It still bothers us to this day. As always, Tulsa, get it done. Broken Arrow actually kept their shit together while Tulsa lost power for a week. So Broken Arrow, you get a pass this week. Be kind to one another and stay cool out there.